Good morning and welcome to our latest community live event for Be Exponential. This month is all about financial genius. Our final speaker of the month is CORIENT's very own Heather Locus. She's joining us today to share her work entitled The Financially Wise Woman's Guide to a Full Life. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask each of you a favor. We work every month to bring good content that matters to you because you are our why. Help us bring amazing content and speakers like Heather by following us on our social media platforms and sharing our content on yours. You know, they do say that your network is your net worth, so help grow both by sharing our work. Also, if there's topics you'd like to see, please share your ideas with our team. And finally, if your organization or one that you know of would benefit from our work, please help us make that happen. We love to introduce organizations to this community and our content, as well as our courses on the 7 fundamentals of an exponential mindset, goal setting, and the joy triangle. We also love hosting corporate and leadership retreats. Getting all that behind us, let's dive in. Whether we like it or not, financial security plays a huge role in our journey to joy. A recent Forbes article discusses how worrying about finances impacts our release of dopamine, our joy hormone. This would imply the long-held adage that money can buy happiness seems to be true. Can money really buy happiness? This information would seem to support that conclusion, but I'd like to dive in a little bit further. There are a lot of myths about money and our relationship with it. The internet is overloaded with information. We see so much self-serving content from businesses and social media influencers, which is why a lot of the reason why we decided to make this a topic for us this month. Each of those people and each of those businesses is trying to gain a piece of their pie with yours. And sadly, the myths and misinformation about money are not limited to the internet. Often our family and friends have beliefs and share information and influence our financial prowess and decision makings that are not always in our best interest. Money is a topic that's raw, and whether we want to admit it or not, everyone has a self-interest when it comes to money. Here are some facts we know. 7 out of 10 Americans say they're stressed out about money, and 8 out of 10 women would say the same. So women are more stressed out than the rest of the audience. 9 out of 10 households fight over finances, and 52% of Americans say that money negatively impacts their mental health. 20% of marriages that end in divorce cite money as their primary reason. And money is consistently in the top 5 things that women worry about. So if all of this is true, how do we create a healthy relationship with money on our journey to joy? How do we even tell the difference between what's myth and what's fact? And how do we prevent the myths from becoming our truth? Today, we're going to do all of this because of what we always do at Be Exponential. We're going to educate you on the topic, and we're going to provide real and actionable content that you can start using today. Our goal is to eliminate you from each of these statistics and help you get to a place where joy and success can coexist in your financial life. We're going to change the narrative that money buys happiness because what we really know is that financial education and planning actually does. So let's get started. So today I have the pleasure of introducing Heather Locus. Heather, thank you for joining us. Each of you can read her impressive bio that she's a partner at CORIENT, she's a CPA, she's a CFP, she's a CDFA, lots and lots of acronyms. She's an expert, we know that. Many have given her accolades, including being named one of the top 200 wealth advisors by Working Mother. She's an expert in her field. However, I think what sets her apart and why we invited her to join us today is that she has all of this. Plus, she knows how to help women take action and make their lives better because really none of this stuff has value to us unless we can action upon it. So I'm grateful to have her here with us today. Heather, thank you for spending your time, your most valuable resource with us. I know that I've shared a little bit about you. I wanted to see if there was anything that I missed on your resume that you'd like to share before we jump into the content.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited about it. You did a good summary of my intro. I think a couple interesting, maybe more interesting fun facts. I have 2 kids who are in college, so navigating empty nesting. I was divorced like 14 years ago, so I've had the whole journey of being married and finances and money, and as a single parent and divorce and second relationship. So I've have a lot of experience personally and professionally, and this is my favorite thing to talk about, having, women be thoughtful on their finances so they can enjoy a full life.
Yeah, and that's great color because you've kind of lived each of those journeys. And so there's something relevant in your experience for everybody in the audience.
Exciting.
All right. All right. Well, let's dive in. I think you have, oh yeah, you have control and we can see your screen. So I think we're ready to go.
Sounds great. So we thought we would just give some highlights of the 5 key things that wise women do to enjoy a full life and have some conversation in between. This presentation is going to have some stereotypical comments. Of course, stereotypical things tend to be true, but not always. So just want to give a full disclaimer there. And also, these are comments of my own, not necessarily of Corient, my firm. And anything you see in here, you should talk to your own financial advisor about to get your own specific, data and applicability to your own situation. So, one of the things is on financial planning, people will ask me, is it different for women versus men? And the core technical issues are the same, but women do have unique risks, and that's primarily because they live longer. So because they live longer, they have more years to plan for, which makes a significant difference when you're looking at lifelong financial security. Women often live by themselves more often due to choice or circumstance. They have less time in the workforce. For some people, primarily because we're more willing to take care of our kids and our aging loved ones. So all of these things often result in women having less money saved for retirement and a longer retirement to plan for because they live longer.
And Heather, I love that you call all of those things out. So first of all, I like the comment about stereotypes because stereotypes are created or they happen because they're mostly true and not always. And I also love the fact that you're talking about the things that are real. I think we're in a world where we just can't talk about real things. And it is real that we care for others. It is real that we are not in the workforce as long as men are typically. It is true that we live longer. And so I just think sometimes we hide from those facts and it becomes a point of controversy instead of getting to the meat and potatoes of what is it that we're trying to do, which is, create financial security.
Exactly, good point. And it's having the willingness to have the frank, transparent conversations, which makes it less scary. Really,
Yeah.
it makes and much higher probability of getting taken care of.
Yeah, for sure.
So that leads into the, wise women. The clients that I see are happiest and healthiest, not only for themselves, but create full lives for their kids, loved ones, friends, and community. They're really making conscious choices. And so that starts with taking time to reflect on what's important to them in all areas of their life, and then aligning their finances with those values and the priorities, which are obviously evolving as life evolves. So we help clients focus on all of these different issues and balance the different pieces.
That's good.
To do this, there's 5 key strategies as we've talked about. So we'll talk about each one of them. But the first one is funding the goals. And so to fund the goals, you have to start by identifying what do you want. Not only just for you, but others you might care about, whether it's children, aging loved ones, charities, nonprofits, whatever it is that's important to you. And then quantify, what will it take? So that's where obviously working for most people, it's working with a financial advisor or professional to say, what do I have now? How much can I realistically save? How long do I want to work? Would I get an inheritance? What other pieces might come up? And quantify how much should I be saving to reach these goals? How much is practical? And how do we come up with a plan for the gap if there is one? And, we work with people from all aspects. We do tend to work with more high net worth people, but it doesn't matter how many zeros someone has, in their checking account. It's assessing where are you at today and then taking pragmatic steps to get where you'd like to go.
Yeah. And what I love again about this and so much of the content that you've given, you talk about fund her goals. And I think it's really important to call out that everybody's goals don't need to be the same. This isn't about judging somebody's goal. You aren't there to say, I wouldn't have that as a goal. I think that I'm probably certain you haven't had that as a conversation. It's about understanding what their goals are and, creating a path to getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other key training that I've done in the past is the CPA, the CFP, the CDFA, which is Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, is really, really helpful for the technical training. But I did a year-long executive coaching program 25 years ago to ask better questions. So it's all about, as you're saying, what is that individual's goal? What's important to them? It doesn't matter what I think or any other financial advisor thinks. It's all about the client, the person we're trying to help. And I think that's one of many benefits of aging as we're more wise women. I'm 52. It's like we get more and more confident, like that's okay. What we want is important too, not just the kids, work, spouse, life, whatever everyone else we think should do.
Yeah, so much of that is in our own heads. I know one of my core beliefs is that our mind is the most significant inhibitor to our own success. And I think so much of it is drawn from our own minds. The world isn't necessarily telling us that. The world is endorsing what we've already brought to our heads. And so,
Yeah. Well said.
there's no judgment on the goals, and there's no reason not to talk about money. But oftentimes in our heads, we've decided that, we aren't educated enough, our goals don't matter. And so I think it's changing that narrative for ourselves.
Exactly. And here's a list of common things we see people say, but there's a line on the bottom that we use. It's like whatever's important to someone else. And it is really, though, important to prioritize what do people really, really want? Like they're willing to take the time and energy no matter what it takes to make happen. What do they want? And then what's nice to have if possible. If markets do well, if people's career goes better than they expected, those more reach goals, but not their top priorities. And I think it's really important for people to do, women especially, to do this on their own first, because we tend to, not always stereotypical, as you said, but mostly true, we tend to defer to others or overweight what's important to them. So I think it's easier if people focus on their own individually, what's important, and then share with others, where they want to go and what they want to do. This balance sheet is, the first step is assessing where you're at starting. This is so key. It's like wherever you're at today, however much debt you own or however many, zeros you have in your bank account, to start with the assets which you own. Usually you're going to start with your checking, kind of working capital, your investment assets. So retirement accounts. Retirement accounts are just accounts that have tax benefits. Usually you get a tax deduction when you put the money in, but that means you have some rules you need to follow when you take it out. Non-qualified accounts means assets that you've saved with after-tax money, so you can take it whenever you'd like, and you have different taxation. Obviously, real estate, if people own a home or a condo, and then liabilities, whether that's mortgage, student loan, credit debt, card debt, whatever it is. But assessing where you're at, and this can be done, in many programs online, Quicken, whatever. It could be literally just handwritten. I personally just keep my own in my Excel spreadsheet, and then I update it periodically. So I have all the columns so I can see how it evolves over time. Again, the format's not important. It's just that you do it, even if you write it on a Post-it note. Don't make it a big project, but just write down everything you own and owe and check your credit report to make sure you know everything on the liabilities that's out there, and obviously clean up anything that isn't.
Yeah, so that's a great little tidbit. So you had mentioned the credit report. So, just going out to their credit report and making sure there's nothing out there that they're not thinking about or, considering. This spreadsheet, you said you keep yours on a spreadsheet. Is there a resource that we can provide to the community that is a template that they can use? Is there one either that you can provide or that you know of online?
Yeah, we'll get you one. We'll follow up.
Okay, perfect. So we'll put one out there in the community for anybody who's interested in having some sort of starting point. I also wanted to mention one thing that you kind of skipped over, but you made a career out of being a financial planner, and just Mike talked about it last week when we met with him. Why do I need to have a financial planner? Like why do you think that that's why do you think your job's important?
Yeah. Well, I think honestly, the most important reason is it creates the time, space, and structure to think about money, to make conscious choices, and to quantify and align, all the investments and goals, and make sure you're just spending your time, money, energy, all of your resources in the way that aligns with your values and priorities, which evolves again as life does. I think that's the number one thing. Most people come because they don't feel like they have the technical expertise, so they need help crunching the numbers, and or they don't have access to investment resources that we have. I mean, our firm manages 150 billion of assets nationwide. We can get access to investments that other people can't individually because of our scale. And other people do it too, just to leverage their time. Like we have we actually manage portfolios and do the planning for a number of hedge fund managers, private equity managers, people who are really, really sophisticated financially, but their time is better spent making money in their own investment strategies rather than doing their planning, and or especially if they're married, again, it creates that time and space for both of them to slow down, to step away from business, kids, day-to-day life, and say, what's really important to us, quantify what they need, and then make sure they're funding that in a way that aligns with their values.
Yeah, and I loved, you mentioned something about confident, having the confidence. For me, having that financial planner in the background, it gives me, I've got somebody else on my team. I've got a third party's opinion of what we're doing and if it's getting me to my goals. So for me, that's why I really love working with our financial planner.
Exactly. Some of like one of my clients that says that always says like, I'm your best and worst client. He's worked his whole career in financial services and has been at State Street and a number of different organizations, currently at Fidelity. But sometimes he's so close to it that it's hard not to make emotional decisions on your own things. Again, even people are very financially sophisticated. It's hard to make it a priority when it's your own. It's like the, shoemaker's children, you don't get to your own stuff. Second, it's hard when the markets are really good or really bad to not let greed take over or fear. The closer you are to it, the harder it is to not get caught up to that. Even if logically you absolutely know you shouldn't, it's hard not to get sucked into that. And then again, just to get the time and space and then include a significant other, partner, spouse, whatever, in those conversations.
And the musical Hamilton says it's hard to put a fire out from inside the house. And I always think about that as it relates to this. I spent 30 years writing financial software. Like this is what we did. We trained people. I've got a strong background in finance, and I would never consider doing this on my own.
Smart. Very smart. And so, often people ask us, how much do I need to save? And again, by no questions asked, the best thing to do is to work with somebody experienced in this and knows the software and can help you articulate your goals and quantify amounts specifically for you and your spouse, significant other, if appropriate. But it is obviously nice to have rules of thumb. So there's been many, many studies in our industry that say, typically you can withdraw about 4 to 5% off your portfolio, and that will last you between 25 to 30 years in retirement. So what that means is that if somebody had $1 million and they expect to live 25 years, they could spend probably about $50,000 a year. There's a lot of nuances that go into that. How much taxable gain do you have? What tax rate? A lot of different things, but in round numbers to make it easy, 50,000. But if you're going to live 30 years in retirement, then you have to spend a lower amount. So then if you're going to have $1 million, you could only be confident you could spend more like $45,000 a year. So you can only spend 90% of what you could if you're going to live 25 years, so 10% less. And that's, as we talked about, really important with women because women tend to live 5 years or more longer than men in retirement. So here's the math between why statistically, because women live longer, planning is even more important to them.
Right.
And then it's compounded by the fact that studies show, again, it's stereotypical, not always true, but studies show that women on average only have 70% saved of the amount of money men have saved at retirement. So if a man on average would have a certain man would have $1 million saved for retirement, a stereotypical woman might only have 700,000 at retirement, and then they need to fund 30 years. So then they could only spend 30,000 a year compared to, an average man who might be able to have $1 million and spend the 50,000 a year because they live a shorter lifespan on average. And so again, here's the math of why it's really important to know, most importantly, your own health history, your family history, and what you think your numbers are. But to be aware of, yeah, for most women, they are going to live longer and have less assets. So it impacts their retirement significantly. And if they start early, then they can hopefully save more and overcome this.
Yeah, I've seen a million different topics on this. I've seen a lot of slides. I've watched a lot of stuff. This is actually the most simple way to put that information together that I've ever seen. It's very simple, 4 to 5% for, however many years. That makes math really simple. And, you mentioned all of the things about tax deductibility and what's, lots of nuances, but certainly, having just a starting point like this is really, really helpful.
Awesome. So then, of course, the question is, how do you save $1 million by retirement? And so this is designed to give you a, back of the napkin, quick cheat sheet. If somebody's goal was to retire at age 65, depending on what their current age is, this is how much they would need to save to get, if they had a kind of a aggressive portfolio of stocks and bonds and, probably 70 to 80% stocks, and could get about 8% on average, which again is aggressive, but definitely possible, especially if somebody starts, shortly after college and has a lot of years. So how you read this is if someone's 25 and their goal is to save $1 million by age 65, they need to save about $3,900 a year. But fast forward to those even younger than me now at 52, if I'm, 2 years ago, if I would have started and my goal was to save to retire at 65, I would need to be saving $36,800 a year to get to that same $1 million mark. And of course, I'm using the $1 million figures because then people can do math easy to gross it up or down. If these numbers are totally not realistic, maybe you do 1/10 of this, or half of it. Or if you want to be able to spend more, then your goal is 2 million, so you double it. But again, quick cheat sheets to kind of give you guidance, and then talk to a financial advisor and have these numbers done on your own. It's also, there's a lot of financial calculators online, and they're all mathematically excellent. Typically, I shouldn't say all, because some will have flaws in them, but many are. The problem is, and sometimes it's too easy to change. If somebody's like, I can't save that much, what if I only want to do this? Okay, what if I get 10% return or 12% return? And they try to change variables that aren't probably likely to happen to make it work. And so that's also why it's really important to work with an experienced wealth advisor that's managed money for many years, good markets and bad, high inflation, low inflation, and seeing, what people do to adjust to make things work long term.
When you think about, kind of doing that math, one of the questions that I had personally, and actually I still kind of have, is like, how do you know what what is my post-retirement spending going to look like? And I know there's a lot of variables to that. But one of the things I remember in the height of when we were spending lots of money with lots of kids in college and tuition and all of those things, I was like, oh my gosh, I will never have enough money. It's like impossible. And then now that most of our kids are gone, and you're like, oh, wait, as you get older, you buy less things, you buy less clothing, you don't need, you don't need things. And so I don't know if there's any math out there. Is there any guidelines for, what you're spending in your, call it 30s, in the height of probably where you spend your most money, or 40s, what that looks like, or how that declines over time? Is there anything? And I don't know if there is, but.
It's not something easy I could just give you a quick slide for, but here are some things that I can tell you often tend to be true, especially for professionals and people in this community who are probably really proactively trying to plan and work and have access to some resources. Most people, if they can, will actually probably tend to spend about what they were spending, as you're saying, after the kids got fairly settled. Those few years before retirement is what they tend to spend in retirement. Because on one hand, their spending goes up because they have more time. But to your point, they have typically less direct responsibilities for kids and other things. Having said that, though, they often, if they can afford to, want to tend to help them, and they want to take them on trips and do other things or give to other causes. So a lot of times people say, well, I'll spend a lot less in retirement. That's not necessarily true. Especially we see, if people have the cash flow, it's not uncommon they'll spend more in retirement than those 5 years right before retirement, because they have more time. Like when they're working, they just don't even have time to spend that
Right.
much and take, as many trips or other high cost things. Second, what we do see consistently too is clients in their 80s tend to reduce their spending. They don't take as many trips. They might replace that with gifting if things went really well. But as you said, like they don't want as much. They've bought the stuff, they've done the trips, and sometimes that even slows down at 70. It depends on their life and what they've done. What we tend to do is ask, because most of our clients don't keep track in detail, but we look at the tax returns, we ask how much they make, what kind of car they drive, what kind of house they have, how much debt. And then again, the benefit of working with an experienced wealth advisor after doing this for 30 years, you just get a good sense of like, this is kind of the lifestyle, this is what they've done, this is how we could adjust. And in our projections, we separate out like base spending for a house, especially if they have, second property or not, travel. So that lever, obviously they have more control over, gifts to nonprofits as well as kids. And you can usually get a good feel. Where this also comes in all the time for me, because I help people a lot through divorce and beyond, is like they didn't even know what they were spending pre-divorce, and then now they're in two households and they have no idea. But again, just having that experience, we can usually give them a pretty good sense. I would say the best way, if somebody just wants to look, I tell them like, start with your annual statement of your credit card. And if you can, like get a summary of your checking account and just look high level, that will give you an idea of how much came in, how much went out. Because the details of where it went is helpful, but starting with at a big picture where you're at, and then knowing how much are my fixed costs with my mortgage, with property taxes, any other things I can't adjust will help you back into how much discretionary you have pretty quickly.
Actually, the annual spending from your credit card, I've looked at it every year. I think it's super fascinating. I've had no purpose for it ever, but what you just shared is actually so purposeful. It's so helpful.
Good. Yeah, I do. I get my credit card in hard copy and my checking account in hard copy because it gives me the discipline to look and just reflect like, okay, was that in line with my values? Like, okay, the Ubers, the eating out, the other things that when you're doing it day by day, just go. But when you see it for a month, helps you just super quickly, pragmatically go, yeah, that was worth it. It wasn't, whatever. Okay. And then be more conscious the next month without sitting down and doing a whole big budget. I mean, that's great. People who love to do it, of course, that's a great thing, but most people don't have that much interest.
No, but you said something that's just important because you said, is it aligned with your goals or your values? And I love that because we talk so much in this community about just being holistic in all we think about. And yes, you can think about, our goals. We have like our little categories of goals. We have financial and spiritual and fun and fitness and all these things. But what I don't think people think about is, do I make sure my financial decisions align with all of those values? Like not just the financial ones, but the other ones too. So that's awesome.
Okay, so we have already alluded to this, but it's so important to talk to those important to you about money for many reasons. One, it just helps reinforce what's important to you and gives you that sounding board and way to like concrete it in your neurological, thought process. Obviously, for most people, if they're married, to have a spouse or a significant other, talking to finances, because as you've alluded to, it's typically a huge issue in divorces or conflict in marriage. So having transparent conversations about what they learned, what each of you learned about money growing up, what's important to you now, what your top priorities are, again, which evolves as life evolves. Talking to your kids. I mean, one of the best things you could do for your own retirement is raise financially responsible children. And I have a whole nother presentation on that. And what was fascinating when I first did the research for it 25 years ago is children's work ethic is substantially established by age 12. And a lot of times people have a conundrum about whether or not to give allowance and whether to tie allowance to chores. And research shows that what you want to do is provide children the opportunity to really have decision-making with money. When they get to the point that they're asking questions about how much things cost and they want to buy things, et cetera, that's an indication of start giving them a small allowance, not tied to chores. Because the goal is not to, at that point, tie it to the work. It's to give them the true opportunity to make decisions. And people will say, but what if they spend it on something that they shouldn't or I don't like? I mean, you can give rules like maybe no guns or something that's not aligned with your family's values. But other than that, you want to let them buy whatever they want because that's how they are going to learn the best. And you'd rather have them make a mistake with a small amount of money and learn at younger ages than wait until they're in their 20s or beyond and make mistakes with big amount of money, larger amounts that are harder to recover from.
So
And
sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
And then once children get older, and older could be any age, it's then to align certain chores with work can be very beneficial, but that's a conscious choice separate for what we would call extra chores. So there's family chores, like most people would say, taking out the garbage, unloading the dishwasher. Those you do as chores because you're part of the family, taking care of yourself and taking care of others that live with you. That's different. We don't tie that to money because they don't have a choice to do that. You don't get to pick to do it or not. And then there's extra chores, which can vary by family too. Like sometimes mowing the lawn might be a family chore. Sometimes that might be an extra chore. Moving snow, whatever, the things people could come up with. But extra chores could be something where you pay for that. And then the kids the better job they do, they get more money. They might be able to choose to do it or not do it, but be really thoughtful on when you tie money to chores or any expectations of what are you trying to achieve? What's the point? Is it for the child to learn about money? Is it to learn about work? Is it about family responsibility?
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to share a quick story about our daughter. One of our daughters, we did the thing. I bought them these piggy banks where they would get money every week, and they'd have money that would be for fun. One was for God, and one was for savings, and they would have to save their money and split it all up. And I did little envelope system and all of the things. But our one daughter, our kids, I'm very grateful, are pretty frugal with their money, but she was particularly frugal. And every week she would want to go buy a Barbie. She'd see these glamorous Barbies and these dresses, and they were all so pretty. But every single time she would come home with the same exact Barbie that was $3.82 because she could not justify spending the extra money to get the fancier Barbie. And it nearly killed me because I was like, you have 12 of the same Barbie in the toy room. But she really wanted the one with the dress, but it took her a long time to put together that instead of getting, a Barbie every few weeks, if you wait 2 months, then you can get the nicer Barbie and just not have all the same Barbie in the closet. And so it just was a funny process to watch. It was so hard to bite my tongue.
Great job, Mom. Yeah, really good job.
Yeah. I don't know that I always bit my tongue, but I was like, you don't have to buy the Barbie in the swimsuit every week. You can get one with the fancy gown.
And I'm sure you probably explained the concept of saving more weeks and doing it, but it probably took multiple weeks for her to have the control to do that because of the age. And then now my guess is she's probably really good at it because it really got ingrained from you telling her and then her experiencing that at a very young age. So that's awesome. I love it. Great story.
Yeah, for sure. And actually now she's quite successful and, and she spends nothing. She's actually, I'd like her to spend more on herself actually.
Well, and I think that's a good distinction. So we really talk about having a healthy relationship with money. It's not about not spending on things you can afford if they're important to you. And if they're not important to you, then it's obviously fine not to. But when people have money and don't spend it if it's out of fear or some unconscious belief or some other reason that they're not making that conscious choice to not spend because it's not important to them, then that's not healthy either.
Right.
The goal, again, that's why we're about living a full life. It's about knowing what you have, what range of choices you have, and then making choices that you're happy with long term. And if not, reassessing as quickly as possible and adjusting.
Right.
And so also asking people asking their parents what they learned about money, because what they consciously and unconsciously learned about money growing up probably has a bigger influence than, as adult children, even than we realize of what we unconsciously learned. And then your boss, obviously being willing to have the tough conversations with a boss if needed, and really just negotiating what you're worth, being respectful and knowing what you're worth, and then being willing to ask for it if you're not getting it.
That's great.
I guess we already talked about all of this. We're a slide ahead. This is an important cheat sheet too, though. So what happens is if you want to earn an extra 500,000, we had the charts before based on $1 million, but here we said 500,000 just because it might be more realistic in terms of most people's bands of what they could get. If at age 25, if you either get a starting salary out of college, grad school, whatever, or can negotiate $4,000 more in your mid 20s, the compounding of not only that 4,000, but plus then earnings and stuff will on average help you earn 500,000 extra over your lifetime. Versus and this is again, if you're working till age 65, but if you're in your 50s like me, you'd have to negotiate an additional 23,000 to accumulate that same extra 500,000. So just being thoughtful about making sure you're realistic. I mean, it's not about what people think they're worth. It's about what are they worth in the marketplace, but not being scared to ask if the value they're contributing to the company is truly the marketplace is paying that, and for some reason they're below that.
And if you are where the marketplace dictates, your choices are obviously looking for, more certifications, creating more value for your business. There's also ways to do a side hustle and generate that money. And then I want to mention that when you're 25 and you negotiate a $4,000 raise, make sure that that only turns into $500,000 if you save it.
Good point. Very good point. And I should mention too, because I have 2 kids in college, as I mentioned. I mean, it's interesting to see for them, there's a fairly wide range of what the starting salaries are. And I think people are not all, understandably college kids are not aware of like thinking through not only the salary difference, but the full benefit package, the long-term potential. If it's a public company where they might get equity, or it could be a private company where maybe it's a really good opportunity they could buy in. But I mean, it's a lot for somebody in their 20s, but it does make a difference. And to be thoughtful and try to get insights from mentors or teachers or other people on like, what does this really mean for me long term? Being thoughtful on that for their first job or second job can really make a big impact.
Yeah, that's great.
And as you said, it's really important to continue to investing in yourself. And so that's continual growth. And that's both in your education, training, investment opportunities for side hustle, et cetera, as well as getting support at home. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you also in your portfolio, you want to diversify, you want to be disciplined in your investing. Obviously, investing in your 401k makes that much easier, automated savings, but you can easily replicate that with after-tax savings, with an advisor, just transferring it monthly into your account, into a non-qualified account, as we talked about in the net worth. And then obviously most women are very caring and want to invest in others. So they can do that by giving charitable contributions, but also so strategic in their philanthropy, but also being thoughtful on the money that is invested. Is it invested in companies they care about that are publicly traded? So there's mutual funds, exchange traded funds. We have individual stock portfolios where we go through multiple page questionnaires to help clients think through what's important for their investing. Do they want to strip out companies that manufacture guns or don't have women on boards? Do they want to weight it higher to companies that have women on boards and or religious or ethnic different considerations? So the investment world has evolved substantially in this area in the last 10 years. And there's a lot of ways to be thoughtful on the investment that you're doing to fund your own portfolio, still being conscious of how you're impacting capital to companies to get there.
That's a great point.
And so this is something that I think is so important for every working parent in particular to do. And obviously stereotypical, but often true, when working moms tend to take the bulk of the, at least organization for the whole family of making things going on. And so to really take time, especially, it's smart for anyone, but particularly if you have kids and are really being pulled between work and home, of thinking through how much money are you making, how many weeks a year, how much are you making per hour? And so starting with your salary, you want to add in bonuses or other benefits that you get. So really thinking through your whole comp plan. And then saying, okay, 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, or whatever's appropriate. Some people are working 50 hours a week or more. Some people might be working less, but what's your per hour rate? And really anything you don't love doing and can delegate for less than that should be delegated. So if you love running errands and cooking and doing those things, great, do them because you love it. But if you don't, then I encourage people, if you can hire somebody to go run your errands or to do some meal prep or eat out, if you can find relatively healthy ways to eat out or things like that, like especially working moms, let go of the guilt, just delegate it because it's smart, because it's allowing you to invest in time and energy for you and your family, which is almost for sure going to make you earn more long term. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you a question about that. So the personal question for you is are you willing to share what's one thing that you refuse to delegate that most people would be like, are you crazy? That you love doing? And is there one, like, tell me the first thing you delegated when you put this together?
Great question. So I think the one thing a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, some people would say put way more pressure on me myself than I needed to. And I debated, but I loved it so much, was taking my kids to school every day. And again, I'm 52, so the whole world has obviously evolved in many ways, and especially with COVID, people have more flexibility. But in an investment arena where there weren't many women, and I was a very young female, I had great partners and worked with awesome people. But literally for 20 years, I was the only one that had primary responsible for kids and was working. And so I negotiated to go later to the office. And what I had to do, I started first my kids were just in daycare and I took them every day and picked them up. And then I kind of grew into a mother's helper. And then I grew into a part-time nanny. And then over time, as I had more and more responsibility and meetings, it's I needed the flexibility that if I had a really, really important meeting, that I could make it happen and not take the kids to school. But that would also only happen once or twice a month. I just didn't know when it would happen. So I paid to have someone come every morning, but I still took my kids to school 98% of the time because I thought that was so important. But it made it hard. By the time I get to work, I have people outside my office. I have a lot going on. It was a lot of pressure. It would have been a lot easier to not do it every day, but it always made me feel like I gave my kids the most important time first thing, and that made me easier to focus on work. I mean, especially when they were littler, we'd play baseball at our house. We'd ride their bikes to Starbucks. We'd go do all this stuff before school even started every day. So I got that quality time with them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we put our office, when we bought our office, one of the reasons why we moved our building was I needed to be within walking distance of the kids' school. And so, that way then if something went wrong, I could do that. I drove our kids a lot. Somebody put in the chat, so I'm going to point it out. For me, my love language to my family is laundry. So I love to do laundry. I won't, I've delegated pieces of it because I just simply couldn't keep up. But in general, that's the thing that I really love. I like folding all their clothes, and when they were little, seeing how much they grew, and I don't know, I just liked it. So,
well, I think that's a good example of when they were very little. Of course, I did it because I didn't have any help, and then as I got help, I didn't do it often. But then there's, as there's always more. There's always that impromptu soccer uniform, whatever needs. So I still felt I got to do it. And now that they're in college, they come back and I do it for their friends who stay with us or girlfriends or boyfriends. It's to do it, you feel connected, you kind of see what's going on, the sizes for holiday, buying. And so to your point, again, it's my kids do it all the time on their own. They don't expect me to do it, but it's totally a love language thing. And it makes you feel close to them. So
Heather, you made me feel so normal there, because when anyone comes to our house, I'm always like, I'd be happy to do your laundry. And they're like, why? I just like doing it. That's how, one of the things I think one of the reasons I love it so much is people hate doing laundry. I would say the vast majority of the human universe hates doing laundry. And so if I can create that little joy in their lives, for me, that was it. Another one that you mentioned about what you did before, we did family breakfast instead of family dinner, because there was so many things going on. And family breakfast you can get done in 12 minutes. You know, it's pretty fast, but we just made a conscious effort to do hot breakfast every morning. You know, and did it happen always? No, but it happened a lot, and it became part of the ritual of our morning. So I think going back to this, it's just knowing what it is that's so important to you, and, you know, holding yourself accountable to making sure that you value that time.
Exactly. And honestly, I forgot that too. Like to me, you know, you read all the studies about how important it is for families to have meals together. And dinner was often hard with all the activities and two houses. I was divorced and then work. And so to your point, it was like, but I got to have breakfast with them every single day, Monday through Friday. You know, again, maybe once or twice a month it wouldn't work, but almost always that would work
Yeah,
during the week and then obviously some weekends. So
yeah, for
exactly.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
To me, I mean, that's what we really focus on, creative solutions to whatever's important to people. It's their life, they get one life.
Hmm.
How do we make what they have work, you know, so they enjoy life the most?
For sure.
So here are some details on stocks. Obviously, in stocks and bonds and investments, this people can get anywhere. I don't want to go through the detail, but what I want people to know is while this can be very scary at first, it's often like anything new. It's just knowing the key terms, getting used to it over time. That, you know, third time the charm is such a good you know, saying, because it's like the first time somebody hears something or does something, it doesn't make sense. Then they go through it again. And then the third time it's like, okay, I start to understand this. And that's true with investing. You start to invest, it's so scary. And then you kind of review stuff, invest more, and then review it over time. It's not nearly as scary, especially if you're working with someone, whether it's a spouse who's good at it, a family member is good with it, or a professional, that can make it less scary. And I know Mike had some good details on a lot of this information, so people could go back and watch their slides. But this chart, one thing I want to mention is, you know, two-thirds of the time the market goes up, but obviously 1/3 of the time it goes down. And when it goes down, it can be really painful, which is the red dots, but it tends to recover. And it's just important to remember that and not get too greedy when market's up and too scared when markets are down. And again, that working with an advisor and putting that extra little security valve, if somebody wants to sell or buy too much when things are high, it just gives you a layer of control of which you don't have if somebody's investing on their own.
So you mentioned coming back to this, just to verify, are we able to put this in our community, this
Yes,
presentation in the community? Okay, so this
exactly.
will be available as a resource to everybody in the community to look back on and take notes and all of those things.
Exactly. So a couple quick slides on cheat sheet things. You know, people say how much should be stocks and bonds. If someone doesn't know, I tell them to start with half stocks, half bonds, invest a little bit, and then that'll give a good guidance of should you go more aggressive or less. People tend at younger ages to be more aggressive. And then as they approach retirement, they might get more conservative. They don't always get very conservative depending on how many assets they have. We focus more on how much cash do you need to fund your goals. And is this money going to be used for your own lifetime or maybe for kids? Because if some of it's going to go to kids, then it has a much longer life expectancy than age 90. You know, it's like, well, what's their lifetime? They may be taking any inheritance over. It's important to make sure you have emergency reserves. That's for short-term things, 0 to 3 years. Your midterm goals are going to be a little more aggressive on stocks and bonds. And then again, more retirement goals, longer term, whether it's your own retirement or maybe you're in retirement, but some of this money is going to go to kids, then it's going to have a longer term time frame. And again, you might be a little more aggressive in stocks to outpace inflation and taxes over time. Quick fun fact, women are often better investors than they think. Men tend to trade more than men statistically, but women tend to outperform more annually. And it's typically because that overconfidence leads to increased trading and lower expected returns, because they'll get too confident and overconfident when markets are bad, or too scared or conservative when markets are poor. And we all have to pay taxes. Obviously, that just came up. But what I find is when people haven't had any exposure to finances and taxes, it's very scary. Again, if they get divorced or widowed or haven't been involved and now are single for whatever reason, and we have a lot of women who've chosen to be single because they love it. You know, once they've done their taxes a few years, if someone takes the time to explain it, it doesn't have to be as scary as people think. But you want to structure your portfolio tax efficiently. If you have losses in bad markets, you want to be strategic and make tax benefits out of that. Consider different retirement accounts. And if you're going to give to charities, then give appreciated stocks, mutual funds, exchange traded funds. And if people are taking money from an IRA, because they're in retirement, required distributions start now at age 73. So they can be thoughtful on how they do those distributions to minimize tax. And the goal is just to maximize how much you keep, your after-tax wealth accumulation.
Got it. And one thing on that slide, you talked about tax harvesting, and Mike spent a fair amount of time last week on that topic. And so if anybody is interested in that, feel free to go back and watch that content. But, it's something that I've known about. I actually learned quite a bit from him in his version of it. So, really important strategies there. So when things are down, it's not actually always down. It can be very profitable as well.
Great. And I know Mike's presentation also had a lot about insurance. So people can go back and look at that. Just, it's important to have a plan B. Life happens, people pass away, divorce, all these things we know. So make sure you're well protected no matter what happens. And your estate planning, trusts, wills, power of attorney, not only for yourselves, but for children who are 18 and older. It's important to talk to estate planning attorneys and make sure these things are aligned with the law and people's values and wishes, which again, typically evolves as their kids get older. So Mike is great content on this in his. And then, get the advice that you need, whether it's a financial advisor, insurance person, accountant, attorney, focus on getting the help that you want. So, do everything that you enjoy doing, but be empowered to outsource the rest.
And I think that is, if you think about the items that were on that slide, having a financial advisor, an insurance consultant, an accountant, and a lawyer, they really are no different than if you flip back to the slide on thinking about your hourly rate. Is all of those things are, if you don't want to be, a lawyer day to day, then you hire one, right? And if you don't want to be your own insurance consultant, then you hire one. And all of those roles create the joy that we're all looking for. And and we don't have to be the expert at every single piece of what we do. So awesome. Well, Heather, that was a lot in a short amount of time. I always go back and talk a little lightning round, which is just asking a few personal questions and a few of your perspectives. But I wanted to start with just asking specifically, what book are you reading right now?
Yeah, so I just finished a couple of historical fiction books, but two things that I recommend for people. One is called The Choice by Judy Pilcoat. I think that's how you say it. It's free on Audible. I think every woman and man should listen to this. It's only 30 minutes. And I'd read one of her books, just more of a novel. I guess it wasn't hers was not historical fiction. I've listened to some others since then. But at the end, she did this after Roe versus Wade was repealed, and it's free on Audible. It's 30 minutes long. The Choice, put it on
And
when
what
you're
was
going for a
and
drive.
what was her name?
Jodi Picoult.
Oh, I love Jodi Picoult.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is really cool.
Okay.
And then second, the book I'm going to read next is Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. He was the one that wrote First Break All the Rules, and really focus on like your top talent, not your team that, is having challenges, and Strength Finder. So he has a new book out called Love and Work. So I'm excited about that one.
Cool. Those are great ones. Historical fiction so I typically only read nonfiction. And a few years ago, I challenged myself to read 12 fiction books during the year because I don't read fiction. So then I converted to historical fiction, which I think is a little bit of a cheater's fiction, but it's my favorite category or my favorite genre. So, and you mentioned a couple books that you recommend. Is there any other books that you think is like the beginning book, even on this content? Like, is there a beginner's guide to this? Is it, how would you go get more information, get yourself from, hearing it 3 times? Like, where do you go? Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are good books. If you go to Amazon, there's some really good financial planning books. But if it were me, I would more look at presentations like this and quick like video links and things, because I just think it's more digestible and more practical that people do. And I would also, and one of the questions I know you're probably gonna ask is about my thought leader. So for finances, I love Liz Ann Saunders. She's the chief investment officer for Schwab. And I love her because she tries to make it very practical and pragmatic. I've heard her speak many times. One of the things she'll say, like, she tries to present in a way of if she was explaining it to her mom, but she's Really, like she's very smart. Like she knows her stuff, but she tries to make it understandable and digestible. And you can go on schwab.com and you can also follow her on LinkedIn, and she has a podcast. And so you can get that content again without like reading a whole book. But there are
Yeah.
good, but there's Finances for Dummies, there's different wise women's books, and I can give you some of those too to put in the follow-up
Okay.
content.
Yeah. And that would be great. And I think, they're all good resources, right? Those are all resource driven, but it goes back to what I said when I was giving your resume is your resume is amazing. I mean, you've done a lot of amazing things, but none of it really matters unless the people on the other end are taking information from it and creating action in their own lives.
Exactly.
And so that's why all of these books, each one of these is just a little nugget. And if somebody finds something in, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a video, whether it be some, presentation that they happen to go to, a book they read, an article they read, each one of those gives you, a little bit of a few drips in your funnel. And then, hopefully something sticks and it helps you take action, which is what we want. Do you have a favorite quote?
I have a favorite quote. So by far, my favorite quote is by Henry David Thoreau, and it's the true cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Wow,
And
that
so
is,
often people are focused on the money, and it's like, but how much time and energy are we spending on this?
yeah.
And, I think it's true in every aspect of life. It's 100% true in divorce. How much are you paying for legal fees, but how much energy are you giving this that's taking away from your kids, your life, your own business where you could just go work and earn more money? Um, in all aspects, hands down, that's my favorite.
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier, and actually I'm going to refer back to it. I wrote it down on my notes. That's why I'm looking down. Is you said invest with purpose, but you said your investment is time, money, and energy. And I thought it was very interesting that the woman that we brought on to talk about finances, the very first thing she said was investing time. And that's what we talk about so much here, because I think women just fail to value their time, maybe because we're all such givers, and typically it's stereotypical, but not always. We want to give. And so sometimes we give too much of our time. I think that's where I'm at right this moment. Actually, it's something I'm struggling with this very moment. Because we love doing it and it fills our cup, but then suddenly, we forget that our cup has nothing, it's overflowing and we need to take a break. So love that. Love that quote. Are there any particular technology tools? We talked about QuickBooks last week. I don't know if there's anything else that you think of that's really, that's become a big part of your recommendations, or just things that you like personally.
I'd say three quick thoughts. The most important one is whatever technology tool is that you're going to use and is easy for you. The second thing I would say on that is don't get over focused on the latest, best technology tool, or even the latest, greatest books or anything. Sometimes people are always trying to do more, faster, better. And sometimes the answer is just do less, enjoy more. Again, so great. Yeah, I'd love an Excel spreadsheet of all my net worth, but if somebody can just literally get off this and before they do anything, write on their sticky, post it on their desk, their net worth, like that's a great start. Like that's really the most important. And so then the best technology tool I would say is whatever tool they use for their calendar. So whatever it's Google, Outlook. And I would encourage people right now, the first thing to do is to schedule time monthly on their calendar that they protect an hour of time. And I would now do it reoccurring at this moment. And then when you get to the first one where you're blocking time for yourself to think about what's important to you, how am I aligning my time, money, and energy with that? Then the rest of the next 12 months, you can adjust for a different topic each month. But I would do it now. And then, again, that first one, I would sit down and think about all the things we went in the presentation and then schedule what's important for each of the next. But just
Yeah.
get it on the calendar and protect it.
And to our community, Heather and I did not align on this. This was not, we talk about very similar things. And, she's just an outside force telling us the exact same thing that we know is that if we don't prioritize it, it doesn't happen. Right. And so that's awesome.
I'm gonna just to be truthful, I am great at scheduling it. I am not good at holding myself accountable. So I will give that time away. So I really struggle with that. So I schedule more time than I know I'll do, but then I give myself room for it to go away and still make enough time.
Yeah, I think we all have that. So I do something similar. I do monthly, I do a check-in for myself for my goals. So I literally have a spreadsheet of my month or my annual goals and what they are. And I find I'm very committed to it for the first 6 months of the year. And then maybe it's that the goals start waning, or maybe they wane because I stop holding myself accountable. But I recently just had a conversation with my assistant and said, do not allow me to overbook, overschedule,
Good
overmove.
job.
It has to stay. So I think it's similar. So if there's one last takeaway you want to leave our audience with today before that you want them to go start doing, you mentioned the calendar. Is there any other, what's the takeaway?
Actually, what came to mind when you said that is just breathe. I think I literally look back and I'm like, huh, if I would have gotten better at slowing down and breathing 25 years ago, like how much more would I have enjoyed this, or at least been less tense and tight.
That
I
is
wouldn't change
so,
anything that I've done. I'm happy with what I've created, but
yeah. Yeah, breathing, it's just incredible the pressure that we put on ourselves. And women often look and they say, society does this, society does that. I think 98% of it comes from here. It's society validates what we manifest in our minds. So, well, that is so wonderful. So that's our time for today. Thank you, Heather, so much for imparting your knowledge and financial genius on our community. I think that it was fabulous information. Her presentation is going to be in our community as a resource. Is there anything else that, or if there's anything else, Heather, that we should be putting in the community as a resource, we will be sure to do that. So after the fact, if you think of anything, we'd be happy to put that in. And Heather's contact information is all available in the community. We are happy to promote the speakers here, and obviously she brings a lot of worth. So thank you for all of that. This has all taken us one step closer to a world where joy and success can coexist, which is what we call living exponentially. So before we hop off, the balance of our lineup for April includes the 22nd of the month will be our last community prompt. Please engage and get involved with that. Tech Talk Tuesday falls on April 23rd, so that's next week, and we're going to see what tools we're recommending for your journey to becoming a financially wise woman. And finally, our Community Connect, which is next Thursday, 1 week from today at 7 p.m. This is our chance to connect with our team on topics that are important to everybody. So we thank you so much for joining us and in this world where joy and success can coexist. Thank you for your time in choosing Be Exponential and for helping us grow exponentially. Enjoy your day.